Hey guys, welcome back to Pet Brand Podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, the visionary founder behind PupPod, Erick Eidus. With a passion for enhancing the lives of our furry friends, Eric has dedicated his career to creating innovative solutions that promote mental stimulation and exercise for dogs. PupPod is not just another pet product; it's a groundbreaking interactive feeder and a toy that transforms mealtime into an exciting game, helping dogs develop their skills while having fun. Eric understands that a happy, engaged dog is a healthy dog, and through PupPod, he is revolutionizing how we think about pet care. So join us as we dive into Eric's journey, the trust, the inspiration behind PupPod, and how he is making a significant impact in the pet industry. Let's give a warm welcome to Eric Eidus. Eric, how are you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, amazing. So yeah, let's start with the introduction and your background. Like, what was your story? Like, how did you get started with PupPod?
Oh, right. Well, my background was in building the early smartphone devices.
Oh
And
wow.
so I lived through, back when people had pagers and bag phones, I was working on wireless handheld computers and
Uh-huh.
the operating systems, which ultimately became smartphones.
Wow.
And so I had lived through basically the whole cycle of creating a new product category.
Mm-hmm.
I could see how software disrupted a product category. And then when I looked at my own dog and that they were just chewing on pieces of plastic or stuffed animals, it
Yeah.
just seemed obvious to me that software would disrupt the pet products category.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the background to build a connected product that was driven off software that would
Mm-hmm.
allow, dogs to think and and problem solve and get exercise and really just have a much more interesting learning experience than just chewing on a piece of plastic or a stuffed
Mm-hmm.
animal.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure like you must have faced a lot of challenges building these things up, right? So like what challenges surprise you the most while developing PopBoard?
The biggest challenge, and I think this is a lot of startups, co-founder or founders will have the same experience, is just raising money.
Mm-hmm.
It is, it's, it's not fun. Uh,
Yeah.
there's ups and downs, but that's definitely the biggest challenge is just um,
Mm-hmm.
constantly having to fundraise to keep a business moving forward and growing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. Talking about the product features and the benefits of the product, right? So how does PopPot exactly like make the mealtime a little more exciting for dogs?
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully you have you can put in some video in with the podcast showing the product.
Yeah, yeah,
I
definitely.
should have grabbed one, but I don't have it with me right here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a toy that we call the PupPod rocker, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what the dog has to interact with. And when they interact with that toy at the correct time, they earn food rewards from a connected feeder. And
Mm-hmm.
the feeder has a camera in it, so you can, watch your dog remotely. You can check in on them. You can hit a button in our app, and the whole product is an IoT product. So it all connects back to your smartphone. But from
Mm-hmm.
the dog's perspective, they're listening for different sounds or they're looking for different color lights. And there's a timing aspect to the game where the
Mm-hmm.
dog has to concentrate to wait for the right cue. The lights or the sound would generically just be called a cue. And when they
Mm-hmm.
get the right cue and they interact with the toy, then they get a reward. And
Ah.
that's all based off of operant conditioning. It's the way that dogs work their way through new problems and figure out what the correct behavior is that gave them the reward, and they figure it out over time.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of feedback that you are getting from the dog on the PopPod?
Well, I mean, and one thing I stopped short of saying is that because of it's all software controlled, you can
Mm-hmm.
keep making the game more difficult as your dog learns. So it's not like a plastic toy that does one thing, and then once the dog figures out the trick, then they can just empty all the food. With
Mm-hmm.
Putt Pie, you can keep making the game more challenging and more
Oh wow.
difficult.
Uh-huh.
So some of the feedback we hear from our customers, and I'm happy to give you a link to a customer testimonial video
Uh-huh.
you can put
Uh-huh.
in your the show
Yeah, yeah.
notes.
Uh-huh.
But we solve things for customers like separation anxiety, reducing that for their dog, reducing
Mm-hmm.
barking,
Mm-hmm.
um, helping dogs just burn off
Mm-hmm.
that energy that they need. There's a lot of dogs that are either high energy dogs or
Yeah.
puppies
Yeah.
or working breeds. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of working breeds, and the working
Mm-hmm.
breeds have been bred to work, so they need a job. And
Yeah.
if you don't give them a job, they'll go find a job, and
Yeah.
you may not be happy with the job that they decide is rewarding, like tearing up your furniture
Yep.
or
Yep. Yep.
your personal items, or just
Mm-hmm.
barking
Yeah.
and having your
But they need
neighbors.
a release of the energy, right?
They need a release of their energy.
Mm.
And one of the other reasons, well, first off, our product is one of the only products on the market that allows a dog to earn an entire meal. So the dogs can play the pup pod game to earn their meal. If you
Yeah.
get just like a treat cam, like a Furbo or a Pet Cube, you have to sit
Mm-hmm.
there hitting the button. So you really just, manually to dispense the food. There's no way for the dog to take some
Mm-hmm.
action to earn the food. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd never use those products to feed a meal. You'd just be sitting there hitting the screen 100 times to dispense a meal. But with
Mm-hmm.
PupPod, a dog can go interact with the toy 100 times or 50 times, whatever the right amount is for them to earn their meal. And
Mm-hmm.
when it's done, then the meal's over. And so, one of the scenarios that a lot of our customers will use the product for is to give their dog indoor entertainment when an indoor activity when the weather outside is bad. And
Mm.
that could be, the triple
Yeah.
digits that you have like in Arizona for 4 months in the summer, and you can't go
Mm-hmm.
outside after, 6 or 6:30 in the morning because it's just too
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or in the Northeast, there's a lot of snow and ice. In the
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
rain. So any of
Yeah.
these scenarios where humans or dogs just don't want to be out in inclement weather,
Definitely.
it's
Mm-hmm.
a it's a really we hear a lot of feedback on the use of our product for that scenario.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And seeing the pet industry as a whole, right? So where do you see like technology going on in like the pet industry, like how it is evolving?
Well, I would say it's frustratingly slow.
Mm.
When I go to these big pet
Events. Yeah.
shows,
Hmm.
yeah, there's like one called Super Zoo and one called Global Pet Expo,
Yeah, Pet
and it's
Expo.
where
Yeah.
all the pet product manufacturers, the food companies, the grooming
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody that
Mm-hmm.
has a product for the pet industry is at these shows, and then the retailers and the channels are there to see which products they want to pick up, and it is depressing. It moves so slow.
Mm-hmm.
Their perspective on innovation is laughable, and it's unfortunate. But I just don't see. I've seen so many industries where software disrupts the industry that there's no way in my mind the pet products are going to be immune from that. It's coming, and the
Yeah,
and the driver is that millennials and Gen Zs, they grew up on smartphone, they've grown up on the
definitely.
internet.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want their pet to be part of their digital life. The idea
Mm-hmm.
that they're just going to be satisfied buying pieces of plastic and stuffed animals when there
Mm-hmm.
are more interesting options that are not only interesting for their pet, but also allow for digital services to help them either keep tabs on their pet's health or their pet's
Mm-hmm.
activity or their pet's weight, or just in some cases, just be entertained, because
Mm-hmm.
our dogs and our cats are a very entertaining part of our lives in
Mm-hmm.
terms of bringing us joy, laughter, and so when you can
Definitely.
also extend those emotional connections in a digital way,
Mm-hmm.
people just eat it up. Now, it's not just the Gen Zs and millennials that are buying our product.
Mm-hmm.
Our customers tend to be age independent. We have, the DINKs, which stands for, dual income,
No
no
milk, no
kids.
kids. Mm-hmm.
They look at their dog or their pets
Yeah,
as a child
as their
substitute.
babies. Yeah.
The millennials
Mhm.
and Gen Zs are really
Mhm.
focused on their
Mhm.
career and being social, but
Mhm.
their dog is
Sorry for
also,
cutting you off. So, what do you think about the thing that the trend is going on? Like people are not having kids these days. Like the trend is going up. So, what do you think about that? Is it like good for the?
it's, I don't have an opinion on that, but I'll say that
Mhm.
what where what's what what's driving the substitution there is
Mm,
their pets or their kids. And
mm.
even with, empty nesters, their older customers
Yeah, yeah.
be in their late 50s to 70s or 80s. And
Mm,
their kids are off at college or they're adult kids, and the dog goes back to being their focus. And in a lot
yeah.
of cases, for those customers, they just can't physically provide their pet with all the activity they need,
Yep,
particularly dogs,
yep.
right? They're slowing down as humans, and if they get
Mm-hmm.
a new dog, that dog may just want more activity than they can physically provide in terms of, walks and hikes. And so each day, every dog needs a certain amount of mental stimulation and physical
Definitely.
activity.
Mm-hmm.
And humans can provide, or pet parents can provide a portion of that. And
Mm-hmm.
PupPod helps close the gap between what the pet needs and what the pet parent has either the time or the ability, the physical ability to provide.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. And just like you're talking about the older generation, any tips on how older dogs or those who with special needs can benefit from PupPod?
Well, we originally didn't have lights on our toy. And I
Mm,
remember being at a dog show and a lady who was really deep into deaf dogs. Like that was her whole focus was on helping to rehome deaf dogs. She asked,
mm,
"Hey, can you add lights to this? Because there's not a lot of good games out there for deaf dogs to play." And so we
mm.
added lights. And so and we have sound, so blind dogs can play off the sound. And it's
Wow.
super rewarding to hear that, these deaf or blind dogs are able to play a product that we built.
Mm.
And that's another area where not a lot of pet products have been designed for those
Yeah.
kind of usability
Mm-hmm.
issues. But
Mm-hmm.
there is just a whole host of ways that the product is helpful for dogs.
Definitely, definitely. And like, have you partnered with any like organization in the pet industry? So no?
We've partnered with other manufacturers, with pet food companies. We've worked with shelters and rescues.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of organizations in the pet industry, but so there's still many more partnerships to be formed,
mm-hmm.
but you can't help but it's such a multifaceted industry.
Yep,
You can't
definitely.
help but having to partner with folks
Mm-hmm.
that are experts in other areas of the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the future of the PupPod and the pet industry, where do you envision PupPod after like 5 years from now?
Well, I when I designed the product originally, my vision was that there will be three software platforms in the pet industry for
Mm-hmm.
these software-driven connected pet products.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully PupPod is one of those three platforms. There's always three platforms. That's the law of software platforms. You
Mm-hmm.
can see it in smartphones, in desktop computers, in smart speakers, and go on
Mm-hmm.
and on. In gaming, on gaming consoles, there's always either two or three platforms that the industry rallies around. And I
Mm-hmm.
think PupPod has the potential to be one of those platforms. Most likely, we would need to be acquired by a bigger company that can um, that can put the financial backing
Yeah.
behind the platform, which is necessary in order
Mm-hmm.
for others in the industry
Mm-hmm.
to also get behind the platform. But the same way that like the Xbox is a good example. The same way the Xbox has, Microsoft has first party games. There are a lot of game studios building games for the Xbox platform.
Yeah.
So I think the way to think about PupPod and the eventual platform
Evolution.
for connected pet products is
Mm-hmm.
that there will be first party products, whoever owns the platform, and then there'll be an opportunity for lots of third party products to attach to the platform because that's where there'll be a huge
Mm-hmm.
customer base.
Mm-hmm. And talking about the pet industry as a whole, like what changes do you anticipate in the pet care industry moving forward?
Well, I mean, software is going to keep disrupting
Mm-hmm.
the industry.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it disrupt
Mm-hmm.
boarding and daycare with like Rover and Wag.
Yeah. Yeah.
seen it disrupt
Mm-hmm.
the purchasing of pet products with Amazon and
Mm-hmm.
Chewy.
Mm-hmm.
They've disrupted the
Mm-hmm.
retail channels.
Mm-hmm. Especially
And
with the new wave of AI and everything.
AI is that's another facet to the software, right? You can't have AI
Mm-hmm.
without software.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be really smart ways that AI can detect health situations with your pet, can give the pet parent better information.
Yeah.
And in order for that to work, the dogs are going to have to be engaging with software in order for AI to,
Mm-hmm.
iterate off of that data.
Mm-hmm. If we talk about your personal insight, like what keeps you motivated, like high enough in the pet industry?
Well, when I hear the stories of our customers talking
Mm-hmm.
about how big an impact the products had on their life and on their pet's life,
Mm-hmm.
they, and you as a, my ethos is as a product creator. So when you
Yeah.
create a product that is still extremely unique and differentiated
Mm-hmm.
and is having an impact in people's lives, a real impact where
Mm-hmm.
um, we have a lot of our customers because they're using PupPod to feed meals. They're
Mm-hmm.
using the product daily. How many products do you use for 30 to 60 minutes a day, every day?
Wow.
It's a small list of products, and our
Mm-hmm.
product is in that list for the people
Mm-hmm.
whose dogs really
Mm-hmm.
benefit from it, and where the product
Mm-hmm.
really has a plays a role in their lifestyle, in helping them manage the being a great pet parent. And when you can accomplish that, it's hard to walk away. It's hard to not keep, you have to, as an entrepreneur, you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly
Mm-hmm.
um, hitting
Mm-hmm.
hitting speed bumps, sometimes dead ends, feels like dead ends, and you got to keep finding your way around these
Yeah.
obstacles.
Yeah.
And I think that feedback from customers is a big part of what keeps entrepreneurs from giving up.
Definitely, definitely. Because see, at the end of the day, it's just not about the money. It's also about the impact that you are having, right? Just because the fact you created something and somebody else is using it. That's what like Steve Jobs used to say, that you can create something and how cool is that somebody else is using it on a daily basis, like you're saying, 30 minutes every single day. That's crazy.
It's very unique.
Hmm. Amazing, amazing. And like if you could go back in time and if you like if there's one thing that you wish you knew before starting PupPod, or there's something that you wish you had done earlier on the PupPod journey, is there something like this?
Um, well, as I meant, going along with your first question, having more insight into how difficult it is to raise money,
Uh-huh.
that may have discouraged me from doing
Mm-hmm.
this if I really knew how hard it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the flip side, um, the yeah, it's in terms of things I would do differently. I
Mm-hmm.
would when I was at Microsoft, I remember reading this Think Week paper. People used to write these papers called Think Week papers for Bill Gates. I wrote one, but
Wow.
other people read them. And as a Microsoft employee, you could read the papers that people had written. I'll
Mm-hmm.
never forget this one paper talking about how Microsoft just invests in the part that creates value, the software part. Like they had opportunities to own their own real estate, to own their own cafeterias, their food service for all the cafeterias they had. They could have tried to seek out operational efficiency from and profits from trying to own those businesses too. But that's not what the market rewarded them for doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always thought with PupPod, let's keep investing in creating platform value, not just selling units. Someone's going to acquire us
Mm-hmm.
to scale the business. And
Mm-hmm.
so we just need to show up with the best platform, the best product, so that when that acquirer sees it, we
Mm-hmm.
haven't left any stones unturned in terms of how we deployed our assets, our investment to create value in software into the platform.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I undercounted or underestimated was
Mm-hmm.
that in the pet industry, it's not a lot of software and not a lot of software companies. So my
Yeah.
experience about that software focus was coming from the perspective of software companies acquiring other software companies. In the pet industry, the main business models are around um, either
Pet
consumables
food.
like
Yeah.
food and treats
Mm.
or service like vet and daycare
Grooming and all. Yeah.
and grooming is a service business.
Mm-hmm.
So for the pet product companies, they mainly are making low margin on inexpensive things that cost between 10 to 20 bucks. Getting them to look at software, they're much more skeptical. It's not the pattern that they recognize. So going back to your question, in hindsight, I would have focused more on sales. And if any entrepreneurs are listening to this, if you think you're just focused on R&D, flip your priorities and focus on sales. You've got to drive sales as quickly as you can
Mm-hmm.
and as much as you can because that's going to be the best way to get more momentum is to have sales.
Mm-hmm. And
And
also,
we've had
mhm.
a lot of sales, but not enough to be we've had enough sales to prove that the customer usage is off the chart. Um, we've sold a modest number of units, but we've sold a decent number of units. And the
Mhm.
dogs have earned over 10 million rewards playing the game. They've also played over a quarter of a million games. So when you
Mhm.
have dogs playing over a quarter of a million games and earning over 10 million rewards, you know you've hit on something that works. Now we need to sell more units. And I
Mhm.
probably, as CEO, should have prioritized sales and marketing
Mhm.
higher earlier on. But
Mhm.
you learn as you go.
Definitely. And like when you entered in the market, were there any competitors at that time of your product?
No, there still aren't any competitors that do everything that PupPod does, particularly the meal feeding with a game that has increasing difficulty. There's nothing in the market that does that. And we have customers that are still coming to us because our product is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll look at like a food dispenser where
Mm-hmm.
they can check on their dog with a camera, they can spit out a treat, but there's no activity for the dog. And so
Mm-hmm.
once they learn about PupPod, and hopefully new folks will learn about us from your interview here,
Mm-hmm.
they'll want to actually provide an activity for their dog, not just a nanny cam that spits out treats.
Definitely, definitely. And like how you must did you get like any sort of like negative feedback from the customer since in the entire journey?
Um, well, I wouldn't say negative feedback, but the product
Constructive
doesn't work
criticism,
with
yeah.
I mean, just like every human doesn't like every video game. Some humans don't like any video games, but some of them,
Mm-hmm.
might like a driving game, but not a sports game. Not every dog's going to like every game. I
Yep.
mean, not every dog wants to play fetch, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that tennis balls are defective. The
Mm-hmm.
dog's just not interested in fetch. And some dogs are very praise motivated as opposed to food reward motivated. And so, there are some people that will say, "Hey, I tried it, but my dog just wasn't in the game. It's not what motivates them." And then, if it's in a timely manner, then we'll, refund their money.
Definitely, definitely. So, what advice would you give to entrepreneur who want to get started in the pet industry or who's also like in the pet industry but dealing with challenges? What advice would you like to give them?
Well, it depends on what the challenge is, but the conversation we were having before about generating revenue,
Mm,
don't underestimate that. Prioritize that. Probably your highest priority, actually.
definitely, definitely. Uh, some rapid fire questions for you, Eric. So, what's your dog's favorite treat?
Well, he has a stomach issue, so he just has kibble. We do give him, he has to take a pill because
Mm-hmm.
he's got a long-term
Mm-hmm.
medical issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we put Manuka honey on his pill and he likes the honey. So he'll come
Uh-huh.
over. You don't have to work too hard to get him to have the pill if it's covered in honey.
Uh-huh. Another rapid question. If your dog could only have one toy, what would it be?
He has is probably a tennis ball. Besides playing putt pod, that's his
Uh-huh.
next favorite
Tennis ball.
toy.
Okay, good. And what's your favorite memory with our dog, with your dog?
'Cause
And what's your favorite memory with our dog, with your dog? Okay, great. And what's your favorite memory with our dog, with your dog? 'Tennis ball. Okay, good. And what's your favorite memory with our dog, with your dog?
Oh gosh, there's been so many of them. I used to take him backcountry skiing with me, and I
Wow.
have this picture where the snow was so deep
Mhm.
he couldn't follow me back down the mountain when in the ski track. Most of the time he could follow me, but one time the snow was so deep he couldn't follow me, and so we had to put him in a backpack, and I skied down a mountain with him in the backpack on my back. That was a lot of fun.
Amazing. And if you could describe Pop Pod in one word, what would it be?
Innovation.
Asian. Okay. And what's a common myth about interactive dog toys that you have heard in the industry?
A common myth.
Yep.
There's a lot of downsides to like the plastic puzzle toys. I don't think
Mhm.
there's I don't know if I've heard of a myth. The
Mhm.
plastic puzzle toy, well actually maybe it's kind of a misunderstanding or a misconception
Mhm. Yeah.
that when if people are familiar with plastic puzzle toys, once all the food is gone,
Mhm.
the plastic still smells like food, so dogs will try to destroy the toy. That's the next best reward, other than food, is to destroy the thing that smells
Mhm.
like food. And with
Mhm.
PupPod, we don't have any food rewards in the toy. Food's in a separate feeder, so they
Mhm.
just don't try to destroy the PupPod toy. We've had a lot of people early on say, how rugged is this? My dog's going to chew it, and we just don't see that happening.
Mhm. Last question from my end, Eric. What's the best piece of advice you have ever received in your entire career, entrepreneur journey, or something that you would like to share with the listeners?
Wow. My co-founder had a great line, which was that stress is bad, but pressure is good. And
Mhm.
so when you can think about the entrepreneurial journey, if you
Mhm.
find yourself feeling like you're under pressure, that can be a good thing to get you to prioritize and focus. But if you're feeling stressed, you need to step back and think about what's causing the stress. It's hard to be the best version of yourself when you're stressed.
Mm-hmm. Amazing, amazing. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Pet Brand Podcast. It was a pleasure to chat with Eric and learn from his incredible journey and the innovative work he's doing with PupPod, from transforming mealtime into an engaging experience for our pets to emphasizing the importance of mental stimulation. Eric is truly making waves in the pet industry. So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to Pet Brand Podcast. We'll be back with more insights and stories from amazing people like Eric. And I will leave all the description, all the links of the website and everything in the description below. And yeah, until next time, keep loving and caring for your furry companions. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much for the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.